Hello and a very warm welcome to you all. I'm Vikas Nangia with another episode of CyberWatch. Viewers, in the very beginning, I want to thank you all for your support to our program, and it clearly shows your curiosity and interest in how technology is shaping our day-to-day life. In our last episode, we were in conversation with Lalit Ahluwalia, the CEO of Digital X-Force and iTrust X-Force, and we were also in conversation with Avani Desai, the CEO of Schellman. Now remember, with these two individuals, we were talking about cyber risk and compliance. This is part 2 in continuation of our previous episode. Lalit and Avani, thank you so very much for joining us on CyberWatch. Great feedback we received from our previous episode, and there are some emails and questions and queries, so we will take those as well as part of the conversation. And what people liked the most in our previous episode was how we brought in the case studies. We brought in some references of some corporate companies, about the risk and compliance issues. The question that I have for you while we open up the conversation in this episode is specifically talking about small and mid-level businesses. Talk about cyber risk and compliance. Avani, I'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. If you're a Fortune 5 company and maybe you're a small company, you're not going to do the same exact things.
Right.
So what you have to think about first is what is the risk and what type of data do you have? Do you have confidential data, or do you have data like a genetic information?
Right.
Or do you have consumer and customer data? And that's where you start. You start with, this is the type of data I have, and what is the risk if my data gets stolen, gets lost? What are my vulnerabilities associated with it? There are some things that are going to be table stakes, right? You want to make sure that you have right passwords. You want to make sure you have multi-factor authentication on your key systems. You also want to make sure that, when you do take data, you're letting people know what you're going to do with data. But you may not have all the technology that these large enterprise companies have, like data loss prevention technology or encryption at rest. So first step should be, what's the data I have? How valuable is that data, and what am I making sure I'm doing to safeguard that data? And then you decide, what systems do I need, what processes do I need, and what third parties do I need. But by no means are you going to be spending the same amount if you're a billion-dollar company versus you're making a couple of $100,000.
I agree with that. Lalit, how much information should an individual provide and where it gets more sensitive?
Last month, I was traveling to Singapore and India.
Right.
And of course, when you travel to a different country, you want to have some local exchange of the money in your pockets. So I land in India, and I give him $100 to get some local currency. And the person who was doing the exchange asked me to put all the information about my passport number, my driver license, I said, hold on, wait. I'm asking you money, exchange of my money. Yes, you can have my data, like where I'm coming from, what I'm staying. What is the need of me giving you all this information? Where is it? Oh, this is required by the regulations and da-da-da. All the good stuff, right? पूरा मतलब कहानी सुनाया उसने.
जी.
पूरा उसको validate किया कि हाँ भी क्यों है. Now, I understand they're following the rules. The question is this necessary for that transaction? The same analogy, every small, like the topic that we started with, right? We call it small and medium businesses, SMBs.
Right.
The small and medium businesses, like your small healthcare providers, small retailers, mom and pop shops, right, running like restaurants and stuff, or small chains. People running some IT work, shops and stuff at a small scale.
Right.
These are examples of the small medium businesses, right? Or somebody like doing like a very niche transaction, but at a small scale.
Right. I mean, even a dry cleaner today, you go in and you don't remember your receipt number. You don't have the receipt on you. You just give them your phone number. It's in the system.
It's the system. The pizza guys.
The pizza guys.
Order.
Absolutely.
Like, oh yeah, it's coming from this number. We know your
exactly.
Exactly. So they know all the information, which is, of course, can track to many different places. You put all the pieces together. You can be compromised as an individual, right? So small, medium businesses, as Avani said, now, do they have all the same amount of investments to make to secure at that large? Probably not, right? But also understand the same small and medium businesses, the risk of them going out of business is more than 80% if they get compromised. People don't realize that. Like you brought an example of Uber, and of course they're larger organizations.
Right.
Listen, they went through like 2 or multiple attacks.
Right.
They still survived, and they're still surviving.
Right.
How many small, medium businesses that you know that went through that ransomware or this kind of attack, they survived?
And sometimes it's a matter of affordability as well.
Yes, exactly.
They can't afford to, be on top of the technology.
Right. So it's not about like how much information should I provide. I think small and medium businesses need to understand how much information I need to collect to run my business operations. That's equally important. Like know your business and only collect, because you don't want to unnecessarily put yourself in a harm's way. Like if you don't want to take credit card data, you're outsourcing to a third party.
Right.
Then don't ask for credit card information in any form, because you're not processing it. Just say, make a transaction here. Now you don't need to go with PCI, like risk and compliance, right? I don't need to have PCI compliance and this, because you're mandated to do that, right?
Right.
There are basics that you need to follow, and also what you need to collect based on your business needs.
So make me understand from the small business and the medium company's perspective, what are the risks for them? Let's say if they've kept the credit cards on file and personal history information, sometimes they know this person is dropping off some clothes, they exactly know what the person gets it done every other time or any other thing, so they maintain the history of a client. If there's a data breach, what kind of risks are there for the small and the medium companies, and how they can safeguard themselves?
Well, I think Lalit said the first one, it's brand and reputation. I mean, there's not a dollar amount to that, right? When you have that black mark on your record of this dry cleaner breached my data, that's it, right? So brand and reputational risk is definitely number one. 2, there's going to be risk related to laws like data privacy laws. Every state has a law related to how are you safeguarding social security numbers. Now there's a new law that specifically talks about you getting data through AI, right? If, let's say, I'm in town visiting from another country, you have my data, you might have to adhere to global regulations around data. So that's the second one. And then the third is really focused on if you do have a breach, depending on the sector you're in, like if you're in healthcare, there are laws around HIPAA that you would get fined because you had a breach. Best way to mitigate any of these risks is to take data that just need to know data, as Lalit said. A great example was I was filling out paperwork for my 3-year-old to go to school, and they asked me for my income, they asked me for my husband and my social security number, and I asked them, I was like, why do you need all this information? They're like, oh, it's always been on the form. And I was like, can you imagine if someone takes that information, right? Then you can have a civil law
Sometimes
related
the
to
question is also difficult with these authorities.
Correct. Yeah, like your healthcare provider actually doesn't need your social security number. If they have your insurance information, no need for your social security.
So true. And when you mentioned about healthcare provider, I'm thinking, CyberWatch has been such a learning experience for me that, I never realized that in our day-to-day living, how much technology are we consuming these days? If I go to a pharmacist, and my credit card is on the file, yes, it is very easy for me. Or when I'm flying out of, the particular state, my credit card is with the airline carrier. All these places, my credit card information is up over there. And it's not essentially myself. And I'm saying for the viewers as well, you would be saving it as well. Well, if that gets compromised, you are done with it, man. So Lalit, give us some more insight on that.
See, I think that is true. In fact, I'm going to build upon what Avani said, right? The small and medium businesses, they don't realize how much of a wealth of data that they're sitting on.
Right.
If somebody proves that, okay, my information got compromised through your channel.
Right.
The rest that you talk about, reputational loss and everything, even financially, it can become very burdensome for you. How are you going to defend that?
Yeah.
And of course, the business itself is going to get hampered in different way. Now, the point that you just brought up, because how much of kind of information that you already distributed.
Right.
And this really goes back to our online accounts and everything, right? For whichever way you want to call it, we are a victim of that. And even if you're not giving through small, medium businesses, I'm pretty sure go look at your Facebook and Instagram accounts. You're given very valuable information.
Right.
In fact, if you look on Google, the snippets of like, how now hackers are putting together data elements from different sources
Right.
to actually bypass your security now.
Right.
They're trying to get a date of birth from some snippet from here, like you might have put on Facebook or Instagram when
my
you celebrate your birthday, yes?
Yeah.
Then they're looking at your first name, last name, then like, they're putting like, some kind of last for social, your credit card data from like some snippets, put all the data elements together, and guess what I did now?
Right. Wow.
Even the banking institution will not be able to safeguard you because I have information they're looking for me to validate who I am.
So it's time for us to take a quick short break over here. On the other side of the break, I'm going to talk to Lalit and Avani on the security posture. I've been doing my bit of research to understand, the technicalities, the technical terms involved with cyber risk and compliance. So we'll understand from both of them. And also, Lalit and Avani, I want to ask you, if the information, the data gets compromised, from the consumer's perspective, from our viewers' perspective, make us understand how quickly the hackers can use that data, and you could be at a loss. You guys guide us through how quickly that can be impacting an individual. We'll take a quick short break and we'll be right back after these messages. Lalit and Avani, once again, welcome to the program. So prior to the break, we were talking about how quickly hackers can use this data, and it could be harmful for the consumers. Avani, guide us through.
Yeah. Well, I want to tell the audience, malicious hackers already have your data. I mean, there's so much data on the dark web that they could use it immediately, or they can be dormant and wait to use it when it's probably the best time for them to be able to use it from a financial perspective. So you don't know. And I think it's really important. I know we talked about credit card information. The way you should think about data is credit card information, if it's stolen or compromised, you call the bank, they close it, right? But data that has a longer life, I think credit card data has short life, right?
Right.
You just get, but your social security number, long life, how hard is it to change your social security? But your healthcare data, right? Like, I've had 3 children, my maternity data, do I have high blood pressure? Do I have diabetes? That is forever. It actually is longer. It could mean that my children have it, right? So I think it's really important to talk about the length of the data, and that's how valuable it is. And that's how long maybe a malicious hacker will wait to exploit that information.
Many folks in technical terms also talk about security posture, what it is, and what are some of the strong pillars of a security posture. I'll start with you.
So let's start with the security posture and relate to the posture of your house security. So how secure is your house today? Right now you're sitting here. How do you know your house is secure? Either it's based on the things you applied, like security cameras, or there's the monitoring devices, right? Or the neighborhood you're living in,
Right.
how secure that is. That gives you the comfort.
Right.
But kind of not only relying on the neighborhood and the patrol of the police and the cops, but you also have put systems in your house.
पुराना system जो इंडिया में होता था वो तो पड़ोसी होता है.
That is another one.
The neighbors used to make sure that your house is safe.
It's safe.
But today it is technology that has come into
technology that has come into. The same thing what you said, security posture.
Right.
Security posture of a digital ecosystem, and Avani was talking about some of the techniques earlier. To just simplify for the audience, we talked about this 2-factor, multi-factor authentication. Okay, so a password nahi, out of the other method, SMS token, something biometrics to complement that. I need to provide that.
Right.
Data, if it's in open format, it's just like, the exams में कभी cheating की होगी, मतलब जब open पढ़ा है तो मैं cheat करूँगा because मेरे को दिख रहा है.
Right.
On the other hand, I have put some things, concealed it, or encrypted it, decoded it. That's encryption. Don't leave the data, what you're consuming, in an open format, because if the data is lost, let's say somebody took your, through USB device, or database got stolen somewhere.
Right.
If it's encrypted, you cannot do anything about it, right? If it's open, then I'm seeing everything. So encryption kind of method. Now, besides all that, the other thing, you also have to assume that if something goes wrong, तो मैं उसको detect कैसे करूँगा कि कुछ गलत हुआ है, something went wrong.
Right.
So there's what we call detection and response, or monitoring and response, watching the traffic come in and out. there's malicious going on or not. A very common technique that everybody should be used to, and people often don't pay attention, but very important, the malware, anti-malware, antivirus on your machines. जब आप McAfee, Norton antivirus, all those things you install, what is that? That's protecting and seeing anything wrong or happening in your machine and keep quarantine.
Right.
Those things, right?
Right.
Last but not least, if something bad really happens, am I prepared to really respond to it? अगर किसी ने मेरा credit card data चुरा लिया है,
right,
how do I recover from that? Should I report it somewhere?
Right.
What's my script? You have to be ready with that too. And then once I've responded, how I recover from there. These are what we call as that security posture. Like when you put different techniques, technologies, and not just tools and technologies, but processes, and have people who are responsible to manage. And then once all that is put together, the job is not done. Now you have to make sure everything stays in order because things are changing.
Right.
It cannot be static.
Right.
That's called security posture at large.
Right. Avani, can you make us understand what are the other elements of cybersecurity posture?
Yeah. So what you talked about, the infrastructure, very important. But we should build it like people, process, technology. We covered the technology. People, again, I mentioned in our last episode that people are the weakest link when it comes to cybersecurity.
Sure.
So training and awareness for people, making sure that you use a carrot instead of a stick. If someone does press the phishing link by mistake, don't terminate them. Don't give them an X mark. Just tell them this is why you shouldn't do it. So people for sure, and then process. You can have the people and you can have the technology in place, but if you're not following the process, if you're looking at anti-malware and you're seeing, oh, this person or this system is trying to get into the system, and you see that log, but you don't do anything with that log, why even have the log and why have someone who looked at the log, right? So people, process, and technology, all of that is going to give you strong security posture. And that's what your compliance reports tell you.
Right.
Your compliance reports tell you if you have that foundational controls in place, but then what you're doing every day, that is really if you're gonna have strong security posture or weak security posture.
Whenever there are mergers and acquisitions, when the big corporate companies or the big companies buy out the small companies, how does the cyber risk and compliance work hand in hand at that point of time? Lalit, I'll start with you and then reach out to Avani.
I think it starts with, first of all, when the merger really happens, because both the companies were operating as two separate entities.
Right.
Now you're bringing them together, means the IT systems, the information systems, the data is also getting married.
Right.
Some of the things like, you might be using this technology and then now this technology. You cannot have two now. You have to make sure what best fits the ecosystem. So when you first apply that equation of what the merger in terms of data and what the risk to the data is, then you start applying the risk and the compliance at large altogether.
Right.
Means, see, compliance is what? See, this is where it's very important people to understand. Compliance is also about applying security measures, and the extent of the security measures to enhance your posture was about compliance.
Right.
The reason why compliance came, just like, मेरे को 1 kilo आलू लेना है. What is 1 kilo?
Right.
I mean, I will give you some quantity which I think you will take some quantity if there was no standard.
Right.
Compliance was meant to give you a frame of reference.
Correct.
Okay, it's not about what I think security is, not what you think Vikas what security is, what Avani. You have to think with this frame of reference.
Right.
But that frame of reference is not prescriptive. It's guide. It's a framework to guide you. Now you apply the same techniques to really see in the merger and acquisitions where my risks now entail. When they were individually relating, that's great. But this company would be now at higher risk because now they're operating out in this region as well.
Right.
Because this is what exposes this function now, right?
Correct.
It was not existing before.
Right.
Because that risk got introduced, my technology has to now span to mitigate that. My processes have to ramp up to that.
Right.
That's the things that people have to start with the business and the risk, and then apply the technology and the process and the people elements to it.
In the previous segment, you were also mentioning about check the box exercise. Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
So the check the box with compliance, and unfortunately, I'm not saying everybody, but most companies I've seen, And I understand sometimes the business drivers, Avani was talking about, let me go to market, right? I need to go to market because that's my core business. I'm not want to be hindered by slowness, right? So most of the companies will take those controls and say, yes, I check.
Right.
So I can go to business.
Right.
That's what the check the box exercises. For example, we talked about multi-factor authentication, right?
Right.
Do you have multi-factor authentication? Check, I have it. Proof, see, I have this technology and this one. Now let me play this out in a real life word. You were trying to take a mountain ride, and your car, you're taking the air pressure check.
Right.
Somebody just trying to take one tire check the box. Yes, your tire pressure is okay. Remaining 3 were flat or underflated.
Right.
Would you still ride the mountain with the car? The answer is no, you should not, because it's a higher risk.
Because it's not safe, yeah.
But somebody check the box and say, yes, because I checked one tire, here's a proof, go.
Right.
That's where the check the box versus true security posture difference really is.
And how do you mitigate that then?
It's very hard to mitigate that. I mean, that's why you have to have a mind shift change of security isn't just a cost center, it's actually a value driver. And we're starting to see that. I mean, we talked about companies who had breaches and went out of business, or we had companies who had breaches and we saw their stock price go down. Now you're changing the mentality of it's not just check the box.
Right.
Now it's actually going to affect my stock price. It's going to affect the number of customers I have. When you put money and finance and revenue related to security, you'll see that mind shift, and we're starting to see that mind shift right now. A great example is AI. You know, AI, it's been around for decades, but generative AI, we've seen it really grow in the last year. But when people are implementing generative AI, the first thing you're hearing is, what am I going to do with the data to make sure it's safe? And how am I going to make sure data privacy? Emerging technologies for years have outpaced regulations and outpaced framework. First time I'm seeing a technology where people are like, stop, I want to know, even the Congress, stop, I want to know what you're doing for data security and privacy before you go forward.
Right. We'll take a quick short break over here and be right back after these messages. Welcome back. You're watching CyberWatch. Avani and Lalit, thank you so very much for joining us. Viewers, before we proceed any further with our topic, cyber risk and compliance, let's take a quick look at the CyberWatch news flash. Tech titan Google has opted to settle a landmark privacy lawsuit surrounding its Chrome web browser, averting a jury trial that could have cost billions. The class action case alleged the search giant duped users into believing they could browse with complete anonymity by enabling incognito mode. In reality, the lawsuit asserted Google illegally tracked these private sessions using hidden web analytics tools, amassing trove of data on unwitting users who assumed their activities were confidential. When Google argued it had sufficiently informed users via disclaimers, the judge rejected this, ruling users never consented explicitly to private browsing tracking. Legal experts said the case raised important questions around the limits of online surveillance technologies in overriding personal privacy expectations. While incognito prevents local device history storage, tech giants still have free rein to analyze a user's web journey via other advanced tracking techniques. For Google, a multi-billion-dollar trial judgment risked denting public trust in their products. By settling now, the company likely aims to preempt further scrutiny of the conflicts between its insatiable data harvesting and users' fundamental privacy rights. Remember, CyberWatch is powered by Digital X-Force and iTrust X-Force. So thank you for providing that, CyberWatch news flash to us. Now, Avani, I want to ask you, many students and young professionals want to pursue their career in the area of cyber risk and compliance. What would be your advice to them?
Yeah. Curiosity. There are several resources that are out there that you can learn, but it's really curiosity. Playing with emerging technologies and seeing what the risk is related to those is the mindset that you want. But there are some really great certifications. The first one is CISSP, which is Certified Information Security Specialist, which is a foundation of cybersecurity and compliance. There's a lot of cloud products that are out there, so you can become really an SME or a subject matter expert in those cloud products. But there's also some really great people to follow on X, follow on Instagram, a lot of YouTube. But tinker, break things, and learn from that is really the best advice that I can give you. And I hope people do it. There's 2 million job deficit right now.
Are you serious?
2 million job
deficit. That's in the cybersecurity space.
In the cybersecurity space.
Wow.
And with generative AI, it's only going to get larger because we're going to need more cybersecurity specialists. So it's an issue. It's an issue for organizations. I mean, if we don't have enough people safeguarding the data, it's a threat to organizations, it's threats to us, it's a threat to the country. So I do want to get people, I tell my 3 kids that they need to get into cybersecurity because I want to make sure that we do live in a safe place. And at this rate, we need 2 million plus more people to get into the industry.
Folks who pursue their career in cyber risk and compliance area, what kind of earnings they can make for themselves?
So, because I think Avani has said, in the cybersecurity domain, there's been a shortage from the very inception, and will remain because the pace of digitization is nothing that we have seen at large. And everything getting digitized means more forms of securing the digital.
Right.
That means more jobs. Like AI is just one example. Quantum comes will be another one. And I can list many other things, like the autonomous cars on the street. Who's going to be protecting all that? I can go on and on and on, right, with those examples. Also, it's considered a niche skill. When it's a niche, means like this is a specialty skill, and any specialty skills demands higher pay because it's not something that anyone and everyone can do.
Right.
Hence why we need to, from the get-go, high school or onwards, be educated, trained, if we really want to mitigate that the gap of the ratio between jobs and the fulfillment, or how many people can fill in the jobs. That being said, at the beginner level, when the university, people get hired, typically the range is from anywhere starting 50K to like 70, 75K. That's at the beginner level.
Okay.
Once you're going to acquire the skills, let's say your 2 to 3 year experience and everything, people go into usually the 6 stages, like 100,000 and stuff plus, because they got some experience in the skills. And then as you kind of ramp up, you got more experience or niche skills, just like doctors, right? Your internal medicine, generic to then go to specialty.
Right.
Then it goes spans into that zone where people can be making anywhere between 250,000 to some people in the high-end profession $1 million and up.
Right.
And then people decide to, just like doctors, I want to run my own practices.
Thank you so very much for giving us insight on cyber risk and compliance. Avani, thank you so much for coming in from Tampa, Florida, and Lalit from Dallas, Texas. Viewers, this brings us to the end of our tonight's episode of CyberWatch. Until next time, this is Vikas Nangia signing off. Thank you so much for joining us.